It's not propaganda if it's real, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this new video. I love comparing New York with Moscow because they are both the richest cities in each country. In today's video, we're going to be comparing them again, but we're going to be doing three things. Comparing the streets, how they look. We're going to be comparing how the people look who inhabit those streets. And we're going to be comparing the houses or the buildings at street level, okay? So let's start off by looking at the video of Moscow. All right, let's get this going here by looking at Moscow. This is going to be the highlights of this video, and you do get to see a lot of what's going on in the highlights because it's obviously highlighting what's around. And right from the bat, you can see that the floors, if you're an American, you will notice that the sidewalks are completely different. The material used to pave the sidewalks, to pave even some of these bike lanes, it is of a different material. We like to use like concrete, cement to do everything in our cities. And well, in Russia and especially in Moscow, you're going to be looking at even like these random marble slabs. And I really appreciate that because it adds a beauty to it. It is all over the floor. And I'm not sure if they do that to make it look nice or they do it because of the weather, but it's a really nice touch, right? And remember, what we're going to be looking at is the streets. We're going to be looking at the people that inhabit those streets, and we're going to be looking at the buildings that are at street level. These are just the buildings that you get to see while you're walking around. And obviously, this guy is starting off his walk, and this is not the Red Square, all right? This is not anywhere where you might say, oh, it's a nice place because it's historically beautiful, but it just looks like the entire city is lined this way. You can see it is not a lot of sky pollution. There's not a lot of buildings everywhere. I do know that there is a new part of Moscow where it is mostly skyscrapers. They call it, I think, Moscow City. But when you're in the old region of Moscow or just somewhere normal where it's not like the commerce area, you're not going to see these huge buildings towering over you. And as you can see here, the weather is nice. People are really enjoying their walk outside. I believe this is probably sometime in spring or summer. And yeah, look at this. The place looks fantastic. Now, the reality is that Moscow is obviously going to be a much older city than New York, but what does that mean? Does that mean that New York should not be as beautiful? Or maybe if it's a modern, if one city is newer than the other, that means that it has chances of being more beautiful. So while we're looking at this, keep in mind, I don't think it matters if a city is older or newer. It just matters how much you invest in it. And both of these cities are the richest in their countries. This is why I'm not comparing Washington, D.C. with Moscow, even though they're both capitals. This is very European. You see that there's a lot of shops at the first level. And I believe probably New York is the same way. This garden is really well maintained. This is a normal walking street just for pedestrians. I haven't seen any crazy things yet as we're looking at this, guys. I am keeping my eye out for homelessness or dirtiness, maybe graffiti. And everybody knows Russian girls are really stylish, right? Check those girls out. Really quickly, guys, comment below if you enjoy looking at this type of content. Also, do comment if you've ever been to Moscow. Would you ever consider visiting Moscow? Because if you haven't, let me tell you, it's absolutely worth it, all right? Here's another street view. We're walking down the street. Notice the tree, the area where the tree is, very well maintained. And for the most part, this is a big avenue, but the people are really enjoying these sidewalks. These sidewalks are very large. It almost looks like you can drive traffic on those sidewalks. I believe in the past, probably they were more lanes and they might have made it for pedestrians, but for the most part, like I'm telling you, everything looks really well maintained. Okay, so let's now move on to New York, and then we can compare them after, all right? But I would really like to know your opinions as always. We will be looking at Moscow again, but let's go take a look at New York now. All right, guys, remember that it is not propaganda if it's real. I choose these types of videos because they are at the same time. One of them is 1 year ago, one of them is 8 months ago. And I just believe that America doesn't really clean itself up, right? So we're going to be looking at this video now from New York. And I can tell you that it looks really nice. For an American city, it's not that bad. I usually am used to something much worse than this. New York and Moscow, something that they have in common is that, yes, there is these streets where you can really walk. You can see that the people walking right now are really enjoying this wide sidewalk. And I did mention that there was cement or concrete for the sidewalks, and you can see the difference here. Maybe closer to the center, the material changes. I'm not sure. We are looking at New York. There's a guy on a bike. This is just a random place in New York. I don't want people to think that this is the town square. I don't know what the heck it's called, right? We're not choosing the centers of each city. We just want normal streets. A lot of the businesses on the first floor here, there seems to be no businesses so far. I see some trash there, and to be honest, the trees in Moscow were better maintained than the ones in New York. They did seem a little bit different. But you can see now it's kind of going deeper into the center of the city. This guy's riding his bike, and it's getting pretty good now. All right. Now I'm starting to look at the situation with the people. Again, we're going to compare them after we finish watching a little bit of New York. But I think that the difference is very clear, right? Remember, we're going to talk about the conditions of the streets, the people who inhabit the streets, how they look, if there's homelessness or, drug addicts, and the condition of the buildings. How do the buildings look? But for the most part, this seems to be what New York is looking like. Let me find a clip perhaps that makes it look better and makes it look at its worst, because for the most part, Moscow seems to be pretty much leveled. So I found this part of the video where he actually makes it to the center of this particular part of the city. And you can see there is businesses just like Moscow on the first level. This looks very European, guys. It looks very European, but there's a huge difference. It almost is like post-apocalyptic in a way because of the conditions of the streets. Wow, it looks very messy. There's like so much going on. This is probably why they call New York like the concrete jungle, right? Because it really looks like a jungle out there. But I told you I was going to try to find better clips that makes this place look a little bit better. But I did run into this where it does look like Moscow, but it looks like if Moscow was bombed and they started to bring it back together. Here you can see what the streets look like. Like, it does look like Europe, but the streets are just dirty. So I did find a nice part of New York, and well, this is the beginning of the video, or towards the beginning. And actually, when I think about New York and I see movies, this is what I remember seeing in the movies, right? In the 1990s, New York was the place to be, guys. This is where people wanted to go. And by the way, don't these windows look a little bit like Russian ones? Here in Russia, we have this style of windows. That looks like a Russian village almost in New York. This is really beautiful to me because this is towards the outside, away from all the buildings, and this looks really nice. When I was in Moscow, I didn't see this style of housing. A lot of the housing in Moscow was all on buildings and flats. These are smaller townhouse buildings. I don't know. I'm not sure. Oh, there's a squirrel. Nice. So now it is time to compare and talk about the differences because I believe that the differences are significant. Let's start off by talking about the streets. In New York, when we're looking at the streets, they look like they have not been maintained or cleaned. This is usually the kind of streets that you're looking at. It does look beautiful, the tiling that they put, but it looks dirty. I don't think that there's cleaning crews going on in New York at all times. The floors just look very dirty. If they cleaned them, obviously they would look nice. And I mean, look at this. We're gonna pause there because we're gonna be talking about the people later, but just the streets. Remember, this is what the Moscow streets looked like. Now, the floors in Moscow were made probably from similar materials. You saw New York had really pretty good tiling actually compared to some parts of the United States. And in Moscow, if you look at this video, it has similar tiling on the floor. It's not cement, it's not concrete, but one is definitely cleaner than the other. And I don't believe that this is one of the most important streets in Moscow, just like the other one was not one of the most important streets in New York. But it is a clear difference. The floors are much cleaner in Moscow. Now you have to wonder, why is it? Why is it that one city has let itself go and the other, well, it maintains itself? I'm not sure. Leave your comments down below why you think there's such a big difference between Moscow streets cleanliness and New York. They're both very rich cities. They can both afford to stay clean. Now let's look at the people that inhabit the streets. We stopped in that earlier video where there was someone laid out on the floor. I want to continue and investigate that because it was really weird. So you can see when we were talking about the streets, you saw all of these people just sitting around, I don't know, moving all weird and stuff. This is the kind of stuff you're probably not, I mean, they're pouring water on that guy's face. He's laid out. You're probably not going to be looking at that kind of stuff in New York. There's a bunch of people just randomly sitting down in places. I don't know if they're homeless. I don't know if they're just hanging out like that. I didn't really see that kind of stuff in Moscow. But here you go. You have people laid out, maybe drugged up in these random parks. They don't look healthy, these people. That guy looks homeless. And yeah. You know, guys, I don't do this to humiliate my country. I do it because I want my country to come to be at par with Russia. The big cities that are rich have no excuse, right? We're not talking about these small towns that are poor. We're talking about the two richest cities in both countries. One of them has failing streets. They're really dirty. And the people, well, you saw the New York people. Let's go look at the Moscow people. Because I guarantee you, it's not the same vibes, guys. The people that are walking or that are inhabiting both cities, they're totally different. So here we are in Moscow. You see there's a lot of sitting area everywhere. There are places where people can sit. Let's see if we can look at the difference between the people walking around, the people who are sitting around. This lady is having a beautiful summer or spring walk. You can really notice that the people in Moscow, they're not going to be just hanging around drugged up, right? Here we have people sitting on the benches just like we did in New York to the right there. There's even a guy playing a guitar. So it definitely is a different vibe. There is many places in this clip where they can choose to sit down and or hang around, but nobody's doing it. Everybody has business, right? Look at that. That is another difference. In America, people kind of group up and do things or hang around and kick back. In Moscow, what it looks like is that usually they're going to be doing that indoors. Outdoors is for enjoyment and walking or sunbathing, but you're not going to be having people laid out on the floor like that. Tell me if I missed any differences, guys. Comment down below if I've missed anything. And by the way, if you please could, make sure to subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. The channel is growing. The goal is 90,000 by the end of the year. I am so humbled by your guys' support lately. It's been amazing. Let's continue, but do leave all your comments down below. If I missed anything in some of these clips, if you know other differences, these things that I'm naming right now, these three things are the most important to me though. Let's continue watching, and now let's talk about the difference in the buildings at street level. We're going to be starting off in New York again. Please pay attention, guys. Pay attention to the buildings, right? Look at the conditions. Look at the buildings. How do they look when you're walking or looking at them? The face street buildings, whenever you can see them, that adds the vibes to the city. And we're going through New York right now, and it just looks like a bunch of eye pollution in my opinion. There's just these crazy signs everywhere. Very colorful though. I do like that. A lot of shops at ground level. This is a very old city, so you're going to be seeing that European style of architecture, with the first level being businesses and the top maybe is for housing. But actually, it doesn't look that bad, guys. It doesn't look that bad. It's not beautiful, right? It's not a beautiful sight, but it is not an ugly sight. Here we're still looking at street level stuff, and looks nice to me. There's a little bit of graffiti here and there. It's not major, but for the most part, there is a lot of modern vibes to it, but it is looking very disorganized. There is a lot of things going on when you're going through New York. Let's go ahead and go look at Moscow now, so we can see what's going on in Moscow. But do keep in mind, guys, that we are not comparing to bash another city, right? These are the two richest cities in both countries. And I noticed that in Moscow, here you have probably a school or a university or something of government. I can't see, but the difference is that at ground level, the Russian architecture is very well maintained. Even if it's a Soviet era building, even if it's a Russian empire style, you know, when the monarchs were ruling, no matter what period the building was made, it is upkept for the standards that Russians have today. So some of these buildings might be from the monarchy, and some of them might be from the Soviet era. But one thing they have in common is that at ground level, when you're watching them, they're really well maintained. And here we are just strolling down the streets. There is not a lot of eye pollution. One thing that I really appreciate in Moscow is that you're not going to have all these crazy signs hanging from everywhere. If you notice, the signs are really nicely placed on front of the stores, but they're not exaggerated. That is really, really appreciated, because it is really eye pollution if you're walking around and you have all these signs hanging everywhere. So yeah, I guess these are the three things I wanted to talk about and compare. Now, I've made content like this before, but I didn't go into detail into the comparison, right? But now I really hope that you understand that there's no reason why New York should look the way it does when it's the richest city in the United States. Moscow is an example for all of Europe. Moscow is an example for the world to how to maintain a city. I think Moscow is much older than New York, but just because it's older doesn't mean that it should be more broken down. And if it's a newer city, it's no excuse to not be or not look old. So there's a lot of nuance to this. I hope you enjoyed this video. I want you guys to always comment the differences that you saw, and let me know if you enjoy these type of comparisons, because in the next video, I'm going to be comparing rural United States with rural Russia, because I live in the outback and the difference there is pretty major. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next video, and please do remember, subscribe and have the notifications on. Bye.